couple of chapters are dealing with this something. Make a decision, David, and he doesn't do it. So let's read a little bit. Let's read the first 7 verses of chapter 14.
Joab, son of Jeruiah, knew that the king's heart longed for Absalom. So Joab sent someone to Tekoa and had a wise woman brought from there. He said to her, "Pretend you are in mourning, dress in mourning clothes, and don't use any cosmetic lotions. Act like a woman who has spent many days grieving for the dead. Then go to the king and speak these words to him." And Joab put the words in her mouth. When the woman from Tekoa went to the king, she fell with her face to the ground to pay him honor, and she said, "Help me, O king." The king said to her, "What is troubling you?" She said, "I am indeed a widow. My husband is dead. Your servant had 2 sons. They got into a fight with each other in the field, and no one was there to separate them. One struck the other and killed him. Now the whole clan has risen up against your servant. They say, 'Hand over the one who struck his brother down, so that we may put him to death for the life of his brother whom he killed. Then we will get rid of the heir as well.' They would put out the only burning coal I have left, leaving my husband neither name nor descendant on the face of the earth."
Okay. David's doing nothing. Absalom, remember the situation now. One of the problems of doing this week by week, there's a time gap in here, so we don't remember what's going on. Absalom, Amnon raped Absalom's sister. Absalom dealt with that by killing Amnon. The rest of the family thought, oh, they're going to be killed too, but they didn't. They run away. And David, instead of punishing Absalom, simply sends him in exile. And so he goes up to Geshur, where his grandfather is ruler, and he stays there for a number of years. And for 2 years. And finally, Joab knows something's got to be done. Now you got to remember that in the background of this, who's the heir apparent for the kingdom? Well, it's Absalom. He's the oldest surviving brother. And so this whole thing is just in a state of flux. Who's going to be the next king? What if something happens to David? And so Joab says, we got to do something about this. We need to reconcile Absalom. And so he recruits an interesting way of doing it. Instead of just simply confronting David directly, he wants to create a scene where David really is forced to make a choice. And so he recruits this actress. She's from Tekoa, which is in Judah, to pretend to be a mourner and to go to the king and say, here's the situation, O king. I have 2 boys. My husband is dead. I have 2 sons. One killed the other. It remarkably sounds like Cain and Abel, but it also sounds amazing like Amnon and Absalom. Well, and so she tells her story that the widow with 1 son killed the other. The family wants restitution. They want to kill the one that survived, the culprit. But if they did that, she says, and interesting, the ESV has the translation, they would quench her coal. Now, what in the world does that mean? At issue here is the inheritance, the family inheritance, which is central to the understanding of the people of Israel. When they settled the land under Joshua, each family, each tribe, each clan was given an inheritance, and it was theirs in perpetuity. Even if the family sold the land, after 50 years it came back to the family in the year of Jubilee. You can't get rid of it. It's yours. But it's inherited. So the father, the son inherits from the father, etc. Well, if both boys are dead, there's no one to inherit. That's what quench your coal means. There's no one there to keep the fire going in the inheritance. And so that's the scenario, and she wants David to intervene. Well, let's see what David does. Let's read on, verse 8.
The king said to the woman, "Go home, and I will issue an order in your behalf. But the woman from Tekoa said to him, "My lord the king, let the blame rest on me and on my father's family, and let the king and his throne be without guilt." The king replied, "If anyone says anything to you, bring him to me, and he will not bother you again." She said, "Then let the king invoke the Lord his God to prevent the avenger of blood from adding to the destruction, so that my son will not be destroyed. As surely as the Lord lives," he said, "not one hair of your son's head will fall to the ground." Then the woman said, "Let your servant speak a word to my lord the king." "Speak," he replied. The woman said, "Why then have you devised a thing like this against the people of God? When the king says this, does he not convict himself? For the king has not brought back his banished son? Like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be recovered, so we must die. But God does not take away life. Instead, he devises ways so that a banished person may not remain estranged from him. And now I have come to say this to my lord the king, because the people have made me afraid. Your servant thought, I will speak to the king. Perhaps he will do what his servant asks. Perhaps the king will agree to deliver his servant from the hand of the man who is trying to cut off both me and my son from the inheritance God gave us. And now your servant says, may the word of my lord the king bring me rest. For my lord the king is like an angel of God in discerning good and evil. May the Lord your God be with you." Then the king said to the woman, "Do not keep me from the answer to what I am going to ask you. Let my lord the king speak," the woman said. The king asked, "Isn't the hand of Joab with you in all this?"
All right, that's far enough, right there. That's where we're going to stop. She tells her story. David says, okay, yeah, I'll take care of it. Nothing's going to harm to your son. But she's not satisfied with that. She's got to push the issue, asking for leniency for her son and taking the guilt on herself. She's saying, David, you're going to be guiltless. This is my fault. I should have done something, but I didn't. And you'll be not held guilty. But here's the point. Verses 12 and 13. The point is, just as she was in danger of having her husband's inheritance line extinguished, so Israel was in danger with the issue of Absalom being in exile. If Absalom is in exile, David is in effect saying he can't inherit. Well, that's not a good deal. That needs to be resolved. And then verse 14 is an interesting statement. And she basically says, you've got to deal with this now. You can't let it wait. Because who knows how long you will live. We must all die. We are like water spilled on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. God will not take away life, but he devises means so the banished one will not remain an outcast. Don't let this linger on. Every day gone is a day gone. It can't be recovered. Like water spilled on the ground, you can't get it back. And I read that and I go, wow, that's tremendous advice for almost anybody. I can count on in the years of my ministry and in my own personal, the many times that we let grudges, we let anger, we let disputes divide us. And each day we are divided is a day gone. You'll never get it back. And families let disputes get into the midst of the family, and they're separated. And they'll never recover that. They'll never get it back. So don't let more time go by. Solve it. Get together again. Whatever it takes, forgive, whatever, resolve the problem. And we need to do this. It's just incredible how long these things will go on. You know, I've told the story before, but I'm going to tell it again because it fits so beautifully, and this is a true story. I was visiting a lady, giving her communion. She was an elderly lady, and while I was there, and I found most of this backstory later, a man came in, rang the doorbell, came into the house, and looked at her and says, I've been angry at you since for years, and I just wanted to look at you and tell you one more time that I still don't forgive you. Goodbye. They had a dispute over an inheritance. He thought that she got more land than she should have gotten from their parents. And for 25 years, they lived 10 miles apart, and he never talked to her. And he wanted to come and tell her one more time that he still hated her. And then walked away and let that hang. I thought, oh my word, what do we do to one another? How can we allow that to go on? And there was no reconciling with this man. I didn't know who the guy was. He wasn't a member of our congregation. I had nothing. I'd never seen him before. Never saw him again after. But wow, what a tragic thing. Comments from anybody on that? I hope that doesn't reflect, your family, but I know it can, and it's a tragic thing. So what the woman is telling David is really right to the point. Don't put this off. Deal with it. Deal with it now. And David needs to resolve this before he dies. And interestingly, she compares David in verse 15 to the angel of God and his ability to discern what is good and evil. She plays up to his ego and says, oh, you are so smart, you're like the angel of God, you can figure this one out. You can solve this. And so she presses on, tells him, you're going to be able to deal with this, you can fix it. And at this point, David, his senses, starts to get the clue. Wait a minute. Who put you up to this? What's this really all about? And then he asks, is Joab behind this? Yeah. So he figures it out. So Joab is accomplishing his purposes to get this thing resolved. So read the next couple of verses down to verse 20. You left off at verse 19.
Then the king asked, isn't the hand of Joab with you in all this? The woman answered, as surely as you live, my lord the king, no one can turn to the right or to the left from anything my lord the king says. Yes, it was your servant Joab who instructed me to do this, and who put all these words into the mouth of your servant. Your servant Joab did this to change the present situation. My Lord has wisdom like that of an angel of God. He knows everything that happens in the land. All
right, that's far enough. So he says, is Joab behind this? She says, yeah, you're just really too smart for me. You figured it out. Way to go. And she continues to play up to David that he's just the smartest guy around. Like the angel of God, she says it again, compares him to God's angel, knowing all things that are on the earth. David almost could be insulted because she's saying, look, David, you're smart enough to figure this one out. You know what to do. Just do it. And so David gets the message. Read on, verse 21.
The king said to Joab, very well, I will do it. Go, bring back the young man Absalom. Joab fell with his face to the ground to pay him honor, and he blessed the king. Joab said, today your servant knows that he has found favor in your eyes, my lord the king, because the king has granted his servant's request. Then Joab went to Geshur and brought Absalom back to Jerusalem. But the king said, he must go to his own house. He must not see my face. So Absalom went to his own house and did not see the face of the king. In all Israel there was not a man so highly praised for his handsome appearance as Absalom. From the top of his head to the sole of his feet there was no blemish in him. Whenever he cut the hair of his head, he used to cut his hair from time to time. When it became too heavy for him, he would weigh it, and its weight was 200 shekels by the royal standard. 3 sons and a daughter were born to Absalom. The daughter's name was Tamar, and she became a beautiful woman.
Okay, that far. So Joab, David tells Joab, go ahead, bring Absalom back. And Joab is thrilled. He bows down from the king. Oh, what a great decision this is. And goes back up to Geshur and brings the Absalom home. Geshur, remember, is up on the northeast corner of the Sea of Galilee. So it's a kind of a trek, but he goes up there and he gets Absalom and he brings Absalom back. But the king only meets him sort of halfway. You can bring Absalom back, but he's going to have to live in his own house. He's not going to come into the royal court. I will not talk to him. I will not see him. So the king still holds the grudge. Yeah, you can be in Jerusalem. No, you can't be in the royal court. So he's still not being recognized by David as being the next king. He keeps him apart from that. Now, Absalom, then there's a little interlude here in verse 25 about who Absalom is. And the author fascinatingly gives Absalom just high marks for everything. The guy is handsome. If you look at his body from head to toe, there are no physical flaws whatsoever. This guy is good to look at. He's got this wonderful mane of hair that hangs on his head. He cuts it once a year, which is kind of surprising because they usually didn't do that very often. But he had to, because when he cuts it every year, the hair that he cuts off weighs 5 pounds. That's what that amount is. So it's a lot, and that will be part of the story a little later on, Absalom's hair. So he has this wonderful mane of hair that hangs from his head, cuts it every year, 5 pounds worth. We're also told that he had 3 sons and 1 daughter. Interestingly enough, he names his daughter Tamar after his sister who was attacked by Amnon. The commentary I read said it's very likely that his sons didn't survive very long, because later on Absalom is mentioned with no children at all. So they may not have survived. But either way, Absalom he's been in exile for a couple of years. Now he goes and he's still sort of in exile, although he's in Jerusalem, not too far from the king, but he can't see the king. That's the situation. We find it. Let's finish the chapter and then we'll talk about it. Verse 20, 26, 28.
Absalom lived 2 years in Jerusalem without seeing the king's face. Then Absalom sent for Joab in order to send him to the king, but Joab refused to come to him. So he sent a second time, but he refused to come. Then he said to his servants, "Look, Joab's field is next to mine, and he has barley there. Go and set it on fire." So Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Then Joab did go to Absalom's house, and he said to him, "Why have your servants set my field on fire?" Absalom said to Joab, "Look, I sent word to you and said, 'Come here so I can send you to the king to ask, why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me if I were still there.' Now then, I want to see the king's face, and if I am guilty of anything, let him put me to death." So Joab went to the king and told him this. Then the king summoned Absalom, and he came in and bowed down with his face to the ground before the king. And the king kissed Absalom.
Okay. So Absalom is 2 full years in Jerusalem. The time goes by. So almost 6 years has passed after the incident with Amnon. And so Absalom wants to get this resolved. He wants to get back into the graces of the king. This can't go on, so he asks for Joab to come and talk to him. Joab is the intermediary. Joab doesn't come. Joab refuses his request. He does it twice. He doesn't come. So Absalom says, "Well, I'll get his attention. He's got a barley field next to mine. I'm going to burn it." He sets the field on fire. That got Joab's attention. Joab comes and said, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Well, I wanted to talk to you and you wouldn't come. Now you're here." Kind of drastic, but it worked. Burn the barley field. Now Joab's there, and he says, Absalom says, I want you to go to the king and ask if I can be brought back into the royal court. Joab, and he basically says, tell the king, either bring me back to the royal court or kill me. One of the two. Let's just get off dead center here. But typical of David, David would have allowed this to seem like go on and on without resolving it. He just couldn't make that decision. Well, Joab forced his hand, or Absalom did, and he gets Joab to go before the king, and Absalom then is brought back into the court, and Absalom is reconciled. We're told so when he bows before the king, and the king kisses him. It's a kiss of greeting. It's sort of like saying, okay, everything's passed. Now, notice what David doesn't do. He doesn't say, I absolve you. He doesn't say, David, or Absalom, what you did is wrong. He doesn't chastise him, doesn't do anything. He just says, oh, okay, everything's done, and welcomes him back. And just sort of like whatever's past is past. We won't talk about that anymore. Probably not the best way to handle the whole thing, but that's what he did. And now Absalom is good. And now everybody can breathe again because the issue of succession becomes more resolved. Absalom's okay. Now if something happens to David, we know who our next king's going to be. Now David has not said that. He's not picked Absalom verbally as far as we know. But nonetheless, that would be the assumption. Absalom's the oldest brother, the oldest son, and would be the next one to be chosen. Absalom thinks it's a great idea, as we'll see in the next chapter. But I'm going to stop and see if you have any comments or questions. Yes, Judy?
I just have a question about Absalom's sister Tamar.
Yes.
That she was a desperate woman in Absalom's house.
Yes.
What was the feature she put in the house?
I don't know if she stayed there. We're not told if she stayed there or she went with Absalom. My guess is that she would have gone with him because he was her protector. A woman alone has nothing. A woman depraved alone as she was, or soiled, whatever. That's not a good term. But so she would have had to go with him just for protection to be provided for.
David was her father, right?
Yes. He does nothing.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it is. It is. That's part of what Job's going, solve this thing. Yeah, he doesn't do anything about Amnon when he does it. He just sort of, okay. Absalom has to step in. He doesn't do anything about Tamar to help her. He doesn't do anything about Absalom when Absalom kills his brother. It just,
He's really a bad father.
Yeah, exactly. He's not the model father. Do not follow how David treated his kid. David's problem, I think, is that he loved his kids too much. And his love for his kids blinded him to do something. And he followed the thing, I just won't do anything. Maybe it'll go away. I don't know. He doesn't do anything. Yes, Jack.
Joab devised this plan to get Absalom back to the king.
Right.
Probably he didn't think through the next step where he was going to have difficulty of going to Absalom and say, go to the king now.
Yeah, no, he didn't.
He probably didn't want to do that, which is why he didn't answer Absalom.
Yeah, he didn't want to get triangulated in this thing, although he already was.
But he was.
Yeah.
He didn't think through the...
And he was reluctant to. He didn't know where. His problem is he doesn't know where David is on this thing.
Yeah.
David is silent. He's mourning the absence of his son. We're told that at the beginning of chapter 14. David's distraught that Absalom's not around. So Joab tries to fix that. Well, now Absalom's around, but David still doesn't do anything. And so Joab, I'm sure, says, I don't know what I can do.
Now I got to go to base.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to do that.
Yeah, and Absalom forces his hand when he burns his barley field. It's just a subtle way of getting someone's attention, I guess. I'm going to go take your, destroy your car. Now maybe you'll talk to me. Okay, so there it is. Anybody else comment or question? You know, once in a while, you need to be thankful for the Joabs in your life. I have had a Joab in my life where I had a problem with a parishioner. We were at odds. And this Joab is a good friend, and he prodded me. He says, you need to talk to him. You need to call him. You need to solve this. And I kept putting it off, and finally he got me to do it. So he was my Joab, and I thank the Lord for him, because I became very, very reconciled with this man. And it took me to go to his house and say, hey, I forgive you. And I asked for your forgiveness, and that's what did it. We were reconciled. But thanks to the Joab in my life, that happened. And so I pray that you have a Joab that will push you to do the things that otherwise you may not be willing to do. I had a couple of Joabs in my life, and I'm very grateful for them. Okay. Chapter 15. Again, just a paragraph to start this. When you read this chapter, you go back to David. Is he totally clueless? Is he clueless about his shunning of Absalom? Is he clueless about disciplining his son? He failed to punish Amnon. He didn't really punish Absalom. Even when Absalom rebelled, David didn't want him killed. He failed to discipline Adonijah. These are ahead of the story, but it's true. Adonijah later claimed the throne, and David didn't do anything. So David is just, he dithers a lot. And now we see Absalom, who sort of fills the vacuum. David is not doing anything, and so Absalom fills the vacuum. Let's read the first 6 verses of this story.
In the course of time, Absalom provided himself with a chariot and horses, and with 50 men to run ahead of him. He would get up early and stand by the side of the road leading to the city gate. Whenever anyone came with a complaint to be placed before the king for a decision, Absalom would call out to him, "What town are you from?" He would answer, "Your servant is from one of the tribes of Israel." Then Absalom would say to him, "Look, your claims are valid and proper, but there is no representative of the king to hear you." And Absalom would add, "If only I were appointed judge in the land, then everyone who has a complaint or case could come to me, and I would see that he gets justice." Also, whenever anyone approached him to bow down before him, Absalom would reach out his hand, take hold of him, and kiss him. Absalom behaved in this way towards all the Israelites who came to the king asking for justice, and so he stole the hearts of the men of Israel.
Okay, that far. Again, David had to know what's going on, but he doesn't seem to do anything. Absalom begins to act with kingly aspirations. He gets himself a chariot. Now, your average person didn't have a chariot. This is a kingly prerogative to have a chariot. He's got his own chariot. He's got a dozen men 50 men to run before him. So whenever he rode his chariot through the streets, he had these men, this cohort running ahead of him. Clear the way for Absalom. And people go, "Oh, wow, who is this?" And then he would go by the city gate. Now, you have to understand that whenever you read about the city gate, you're in the courtroom. That's where judges would hold up and out by the gate, and people would come from various towns, whatever, to have their disputes settled. And David would have appointed certain judges to handle this for him. He didn't always have to be there. But that's where the courtroom was, the city gate. And so when you read the story of Ruth, she goes to get her inheritance disputed. She goes to the city gate and has them decide. Goes in front of the elders who are there. So this is the place of decision. So Absalom goes and sets up his tent here. All decisions made here. And people would come and he would say, "Oh, where are you from?" And they'd say, "Well, from such and such." "Oh, man, I know you've got a problem, but I'm afraid my father doesn't have anybody there to solve that for you." "Oh, if I were the king, I would solve that for you. And of course, the people would think, oh, wow, wouldn't it be great if Absalom was the king instead of David? And he would, if you ever had a politician going around kissing babies, this is David. This is Absalom. Absalom, when people would come near, he would put out his hand, take hold of him, and kiss him. It was the culturally greeting of a good, warm handshake, like a politician would do to a constituent. Oh, man, I'm so glad that you're here. I'll do anything for you. Of course, people are going to like this, and they're going to be attracted to him. And so we're told in verse 6, Absalom stole the hearts of the men of Israel. And this was not by accident. This was by deliberate design. He is creating a base of followers, people who will support him when it comes time for him to be claimed to be king. Now, Absalom has two choices, and you need to understand this. One choice is be patient, wait for David to die. Then you'll be king. That would be the natural succession. But Absalom, as we see, is not a patient man. Well, sort of patient. He's been doing this for 4 years. He does this. So he's patient, but not patient enough to wait for David to die. He's going to make it happen for himself. So read on 7 down to 12.
At the end of 4 years, Absalom said to the king, "Let me go to Hebron and fulfill a vow I made to the Lord. While your servant was living in Geshur in Aram, I made this vow. If the Lord takes me back to Jerusalem, I will worship the Lord in Hebron." The king said to him, "Go in peace." So he went to Hebron. Then Absalom sent secret messengers throughout the tribes of Israel to say, "As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpets, then say, 'Absalom is king in Hebron.'" 200 men from Jerusalem had accompanied Absalom. They had been invited as guests and went quite innocently, knowing nothing about the matter. While Absalom was offering sacrifices, he also sent for Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor, to come from Gilo, his hometown, and so the conspiracy gained strength, and Absalom's followers kept on increasing.
Okay. So after 4 years of cultivating his base, Absalom is ready to move. Innocently, or seemingly innocently, he goes to David, and he says, "Can I go down to Hebron to fulfill a vow that I made when I was up at Grandpa's place in Geshur?" Now, David, again, you wonder, is he totally clueless in all of this? For 4 years, Absalom's been running around saying, "If I was king, I'd do this. If I was king, I'd do this. Oh, you want me king?" And David does nothing. Now he says to David, "Can I go to Hebron?" Where was David first crowned king? Anybody remember? In the capital of Judah, Hebron. That's when David was first crowned king. He was king of Judah for 7 years before he was king of Israel. And so he's going back to the place where kings are crowned. I don't know if you know this little detail, but in France, when they had kings, the city of Reims was the place where the kings were crowned. They didn't crown them in Paris. They crowned them in Reims. That's where all the kings were crowned. And it would be sort of like the king of Paris' son saying, "Is that all right if I go to Reims for a little while?" "Okay, good, thank you." And would go there and be crowned. That's what Absalom does. He goes to Hebron, and he gets the people of Judah, his constituents, to shout out he's king. Now, he's got all these people in all the various tribes who are beholden to him. He's got debts to collect all over the place. You know, the Godfather would be proud of this guy. He has all these debts to collect, and he tells the people, "When I say so, you proclaim me king." So he goes to Hebron. He says, "Okay, I'm king now." And he's got 200 people from Jerusalem who are, what? I don't know what's going on. I'm just here because he invited me. But it looks like he's got a large entourage. And so he is proclaimed king, and he is able to seize the throne, or at least claim the throne. He also takes David's advisor, pardon me, my nose is itching. He takes David's advisor Ahithophel. He's an interesting person. His name translated means brother of foolishness. Now, the commentator I read said that's probably a made-up name by the author of 2 Samuel, because that may not have been his name, because he was foolish here. Ahithophel, longtime supporter and counselor of David, breaks and goes with Absalom. Why would you do that? Well, because he's the grandfather of Bathsheba. Does that give you a clue? Why he might turn David in for a new king? He probably still harbored a grudge against David for what he did to his son-in-law Uriah and to his granddaughter Bathsheba. So he's down in Hebron proclaiming himself as king. All right? Now, David hears about this, and David doesn't like what he hears. Let's read on, verse 13, and I'll stop you.
A messenger came and told David, "The hearts of the men of Israel are with Absalom." Then David said to all his officials who were with him in Jerusalem, "Come, we must flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. We must leave immediately, or he will move quickly to overtake us and bring ruin upon us and put the city to the sword." The king's officials answered him, "Your servants are ready to do whatever our lord the king chooses." The king set out with his entire household following him, but he left 10 concubines to take care of the palace. So the king set out, and with all the people following him, and they halted at a place some distance away.
Okay, let's just stop right there. David gets the message that Absalom has declared himself king. Now, it's not recorded for us that they also told David Absalom is marching on Jerusalem, but David figures this out, that if he wants to be a legitimate king, Absalom's got to march on Jerusalem. He's got to take the city. David is a shrewd enough strategist in military that he knows that if he sits in Jerusalem, he's going to get surrounded and eliminated. So let's get out of Dodge. So he takes his entire entourage and heads east, down into the Kidron Valley and over to the Mount of Olives. We'll see that in a minute. And all of his servants say, "We're with you, we'll go with you, and we're loyal to you." But he takes his whole household except 10 concubines. Now read back to chapter 12, verses 11 and 12. Let me just read that for you. Chapter 12, verses 11 and 12. This is Nathan speaking after the Bathsheba incident, when Nathan accuses David of what he's doing. He says, "Thus says the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against you out of your own house." Translation, Absalom. "And I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor, and he shall lie with your wives in the sight of the sun. For this you did secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun." He leaves these 10 concubines, translation wives, back at the palace to take care of things. If you read ahead, guess what Absalom does when he gets there? He assumes those wives are his and treats them accordingly to claim that's part of his claim on the throne. Why David left these 10 back there, we don't know, but he does. To take care of the place. Well, all right, whatever. So he goes as far as the city wall, the last house, and he stops and lets the entourage pass by. Read on, where are we? Verse 18.
All his men marched past him, along with all the Kerethites and Pelethites and all the 600 Gittites who had accompanied him from Gath, marched before the king. The king said to Ittai the Gittite, "Why should you come along with us? Go back and stay with King Absalom. You are a foreigner, an exile from your homeland. You came only yesterday, and today shall I make you wander about with us? When I do not know where I'm going, go back and take your countrymen. May kindness and faithfulness be with you." But Ittai replied to the king, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, wherever my lord the king may be, whether it means life or death, there will your servant be." David said to Ittai, "Go ahead, march on." So Ittai the Gittite marched on with all his men and the families that were with them. The whole countryside wept aloud as all the people passed by. The king also crossed the Kidron Valley, and all the people moved on toward the desert.
Okay. David reviews his troops as they go by, and he has a number of personal troops that have attached themselves to David there as sort of his standing army. The Cherethites and the Pelethites, and especially the Gittites. The Gittites were Philistines from Gath. That's hence the name Gittite, Gathites. They were Philistines who had attached themselves to David when David lived back in Gath a few years before, and were part of his loyal troops. David gives them an out. He says, "You don't have to go with me. You can stay here. You can side with Absalom, and you can help him." But they said, "Nope, we avowed we were going to serve you, and we're going to be faithful to that vow." And so they agree. And David says, "Go ahead, pass on, and be part of the entourage." And the author kind of suggests in verse 23 that the whole creation was mourning. The land wept aloud as all the people passed by, and the king crossed the brook Kidron, and all the people passed on towards the wilderness. They all thought that David is, they're crying because David is leaving Jerusalem. And this is a sad, sad day. David, however, sees no other alternative. I'm gonna skip ahead to a couple of slides here to show you what this looked like for David. This is the city of Jerusalem, kind of as it looks today. This is looking to the east. I'm in the tower of Redeemer Lutheran Church in Jerusalem when I took this, looking out over the city, and that's the Dome of the Rock right there. That's where the temple was, and this hill here, that's the Mount of Olives. That's what is known. So David would leave his capital somewhere in this area and go through the Kidron Valley down through here and up to the Mount of Olives. And where he's heading is out into the wilderness. There's the Dome of the Rock. Oh, that's part of the Dome of the Rock. I'm going to back up. There is a dome right there. See that dome right there? This is part of the old temple area, now held by the Muslims. That's a mosque where they worship. Well, I'm looking over that into this region here on this next slide. Looking over that, that's the wilderness. That's the Judean wilderness. That's where David's headed. And if you go from here, you're going to go down 15 miles to the Jordan River, almost straight down. Because this is at about 2,500 feet above sea level. The Jordan River is at 1,300 feet below sea level in 15 miles. You figure it out. That's why you don't see the Jordan River from here. You got to get up on the hill and look down. Have you been there, Roseanne? Okay, you go down the hill there, but that's where he's headed. So David leaves here, and we're going to see that he goes to the Mount of Olives. He's right down in this area. This is the Kidron Valley down through here, where it goes from Jerusalem up to the Mount of Olives. So that's where he's going. And then this is where where he goes. Here's Absalom when he escapes and goes up to his grandfather. That's up here. There's the Sea of Galilee. There's the Dead Sea. Jerusalem's right here. So he goes up there, And then David, when he flees, goes down across the Jordan River into the wilderness, and actually he goes up this far, but we haven't read that yet. But this is where he's headed right now, from Jerusalem down there. That's 15 miles. From here to there is about 15 miles, but straight down. Okay? So that's where we are. Now we got a little bit of time yet. Let's read on just a little bit more. Read on at 24, Abiathar.
Zadok was there too, and all the Levites who were with him were carrying the Ark of the Covenant of God. They set down the Ark of God, and Abiathar offered sacrifices until all the people had finished leaving the city. Then the king said to Zadok, "Take the Ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the Lord's eyes, he will bring me back and let me see it and his dwelling place again. But if he says, I am not pleased with you, then I am ready. Let him do to me whatever seems good to him." The king also said to Zadok the priest, "Aren't you a seer? Go back to the city in peace with your son Ahimaaz and Jonathan, son of Abiathar. You and Abiathar take your 2 sons with you. I will wait at the fords in the desert until word comes from you to inform me." So Zadok and Abiathar took the Ark of God back to Jerusalem and stayed there. But David continued up the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. His head was covered and he was barefoot. All the people with him covered their heads too and were weeping as they went up. Now David had been told, "Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom." So David prayed, "O Lord, turn Ahithophel's counsel into foolishness." When David arrived at the summit where the people used to worship God, Hushai the Archite was there to meet him, his robe torn and dust on his head. David said to him, "If you go with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'I will be your servant, O king. I was your father's servant in the past, but now I will be your servant,' then you can help me by frustrating Ahithophel's advice. Won't the priests Zadok and Abiathar be there with you? Tell them anything you hear in the king's palace. Their 2 sons, Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, and Jonathan, son of Abiathar, are there with them. Send them to me with anything you hear." So David's friend Hushai arrived at Jerusalem as Absalom was entering the city.
Okay. So Zadok the high priest and Abiathar bring the Ark of the Covenant out of the city. David says, "No, take it back, but I want you to be my spies. I want you to be the priest in the temple." This was very normal. That's what they should do. And they can be spies. Whatever you hear, use your sons as messengers and send them to me. And he tells them where he will be in the wilderness. So send them to me. They'll be your spies. He goes up on the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. And he was told that Ahithophel had joined Absalom. This was a blow to David. This really cut to him. We're not told that so much here, but we know that from another source, and I'll show you that in a minute. And Hushai is an old man. David said, "Don't come with me. You'll be a burden. You won't be able to keep up. But stay there. Be the spy in Absalom's court. And whatever you learn, you can tell Zadok the high priest. He can have his sons bring me word. Stay there and confuse Ahithophel." Now, I'd like you to turn to Psalm 41. You can turn, because we're not going to come back. We're done here now. So I want you to look at Psalm 41 and Psalm 55 to get an idea of how this affected David. Now, we don't know for certain that this is the incident, but it fits all the parameters of David expressing in a psalm his grief as he leaves the city. And read verse 9. Psalm 41, I'm going to read verse 9. You find it? It says, "Even my close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted his heel against me. But you, O Lord, be gracious to me and raise me up that I may repay them." Who's the close friend? It probably was Ahithophel that is referring to. And then turn to Psalm 55, a similar psalm that David expresses his grief. In verse verses 12 to 14 of Psalm 55. For it is not an enemy who taunts me, then I could bear it. It is not an adversary who dwells insolent with me, then I could hide from him. But it is you, a man, my equal, my companion, my familiar friend. We used to take, we used to take sweet counsel together. Within God's house we walked in the throng. Let death steal over them. Let them go down to Sheol alive, for evil is in their dwelling place and in their heart. He's crushed. That his close friend, the one he used to dine with and enjoy company with, has turned against him. That's how David feels about Ahithophel going with Absalom. It just gives you a little hint of the emotion that's going on. We can read 14 and 15, those chapters, and we can read. The author doesn't give us the emotion very much, but you get it from the Psalms. That's where David spells out his emotion. He does it in Psalm 53 when he confesses his sin. He does it here in Psalm 55 when he talks about his close friend has turned his back on him. He said, I can deal with an enemy. That I understand, but when someone who I eat with and dine with, my close friend, when they turn against me, I don't know where to go. I'm destroyed. So it's a deep emotion from, excuse me. From David. As he deals with this treachery. So that's where we're going to end. On that sad note, we'll come back and pick it up in chapter 16 next week. As we look ahead, we've only got about 5 more weeks to go before the end of our season. And my goal is to finish 2 Samuel in that 5-week span. So that's what we're going to do. That's my problem, not yours. I'll figure out how to do that. So if I can stop coughing long enough, we'll pray. Good and gracious God, I thank you for your blessings upon us. I thank you for friends who can be help to us, who can urge us and help us to keep faithful to our promises to you and to our service of you. Thank you for those who are in our lives that serve that role for us. We pray that you will go with us today as we go our various ways. May we continually try to do what you want us to do with your blessing. Be with us today in Jesus' name. Amen. Have a great day.